Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast State of the Balance with me, your host, Imperial Dane, Master of Balance, Lord of Numbers, Hero of Statistics. Off here to another State of the Balance here for September 2017. Yes, indeed. It's that time of the year, 2017 September. Now then, what sort of happened here since the last month? Well, for overall, there's been some changes to the metagame despite there being no real patches. Things have actually shifted in response to certain things. For example, the looks is actually forcing some elements there. So, for example, with the Soviets, while penal trooper spam is very much sort of the core strategy, there's an increasing number of players actually going for conscript-heavy builds. You might ask, but why? Well, as I've already been hinting in some of my more recent videos, the key lies in the fact that conscripts have a lot more utility than the penal troopers with sprint, sandbag building, but also the anti-tank grenades, which does make them a lot better dealing with the looks than the penal troopers. So in that regard, there's been an increase in overall sort of conscript-based strategy, or strategies that mix in conscript, which also means increase in strategy relying on maxims, mortars, and field guns. And even people go for penal troopers actually not being able to attack for support and company, so they can that way bring up other anti-tank weapons. So in that regard, there's a bit more of a spread. Shock rifle is also making a return, increasing their see sort of in terms of doctors there. Again, it is a reasonably powerful doctrine. The shock troopers are tough, and you know, as proper supported, they can be quite a headache for your opponent to deal with as well. So in that regard, the certain metagame is in fact further blossoming up there, going out in different directions. It's not just all penal trooper spam. Now again, I'm not saying it's going away, just it's less dominant, which I imagine I will largely attribute to, you know, Luke's builds there, which again the penal troopers do tend to struggle with quite severely. So that's sort of one of the things that's happened there. So over the search, I'm not entirely sure I want to see anything change, maybe except making the shock troopers slightly less bulletproof personally. But beyond that, I don't know, maybe slightly nerf the penal troopers, I guess. I mean, they could still do with it, but it's less, you know, pressing, since again, it's quite clear they do have things that, you know, give the strategies quite some pause and are thusly forcing responses. So I don't think I'd really sort of seriously, you know, nerf anything with the search at the moment. Moving on to the Americans, not so much of change. There's some overall lieutenant, some captain. Overall, less heavy cavalry, but now it's just a lot of armor company, rifle company, obviously armor company again with all the M10 spam and the bulldozer spam, and that's really where the premium nerf, you know, premium call-in there. It's on the premium on the call-ins. Good lord, oh, sorry about that. Cat woke me up trying to catch a mouse in the middle of the night, so didn't get as much sleep as I'd like to. But the premium on the call-ins there, and would really do a lot. They just, you know, would have done a lot to, you know, put a start a bit to that, you know, with just, you know, calling in a lot of M10s and whatnot. That I would like to personally see a stop to, since, you know, it is rather a cheesy strategy that to an extent can punish your opponent. In fact, you're taking up depending on how it's done there, depending on the map as well. So I'm not a huge fan of that. Obviously, that'd be sort of nice to see it sort of locked down. I'd further push the Americans out to different doctrines or strategies. But overall, Armor Company very much seems like the dominant one, having pushed out heavy cavalry. Though Rifle Company is stepping up. I'm seeing a lot of American players with flamethrowers and M4C, oh not M4C, but you know, EC8s and white phosphorus, as they realise that doctor is quite good, and that's an extent I think is also what's happening there. Just people realising, hey, a lot of this stuff is actually kind of good. So there's some changes there. As for the Brits, it's just further push there for sort of infantry builds, and they can be really difficult to deal with depending on the situation. Again, due to the fact that British infantry is really tough, which overall boils down to one thing you've been complaining about for some time, which is don't make the basic infantry bulletproof. It just really just encourages just math infantry spam. They can just be very difficult to deal with, even the machine guns and the likes, because they could just soak up damage and not get punished very much for it. So in that regard, I'd probably look into just nerfing the infantry section, removing some of its received accuracy, because, you know, it always gets a bunch of tough bonuses. You can get double light machine guns, be bolstered up indeed. So I feel like, you know, they need less received accuracy. Beyond that, I don't think there's much else where the Brits really need to look at. I think it's just the British infantry section, as again, people realising it's in fact extremely good. It is extremely good and probably would need to be looked at, but obviously when that happens, I don't know. But overall, if you're facing off against the Brits, you're going to have to anticipate most likely an infantry build, and thus, you know, go for the counters there. If you're the Oberkommando West, it looks as an option, but you have to then be ready for the armoured cars, so you might have to go for Puma to support it, or a lot of Kedmaps, so you can try to, you know, go heavy on the MG-34s. If you're Wehrmacht, some would say snipers, some would say a lot of machine guns, some are trying to rush out fast, and that way bring up vehicles they can sort of more, you know, severely punish the infantry section, since that is still one of the weaknesses. And of course, flamethrower half-tanks are very much one of the counters you can bring up there. Moving on to the Oberkommando West, largely set in stone there. I mean, it's pretty much for the most part just, you know, get a lot of full scale of these interlooks, take it from there, you know, call in a Ostwind or call in a Command Panther. I mean, there's something going for Panther Force and checking and all that, but I tend to find they're a bit of a minority. So very much scavenge and special operations sort of being the key doctrines there. Some of the fortifications digging in with a Pack 43 and a howitzer. But otherwise, not so much changing there. Volkskunde to an extent needs some kind of nerf. Kubelwagen still needs to be made less bulletproof. Again, early units that are bulletproof tend to be, I find, very bad ideas. Even as a light vehicle that is cheap like the Kubelwagen. But like slightly nerf to the Volkskunde, but also then buff up some other things, because the Oberkommandant nonetheless does have troubles if they do not, you know, go for those particular kind of strategies. So something kind of needs to change there as well, though I'm less 100% sure what. And then finally at the Wehrmacht, which, you know, has some strategies. Currently probably the army that's still struggling a bit most, with all of a sudden this resurgence of just heavy infantry builds from the Brits and other things there. That's not to say they're bad, just, you know, in some ways there's a bit of a struggle. There are the same sort of systemic troubles I've been talking about for some time, which is they have a very hard time bouncing back if anything goes back, in particular in the late game, since they do overall, you know, don't have any of those neat mechanics, and the tech is the most expensive and sort of time consuming. So there are some issues there with the Wehrmacht, and my overall solution would still be, you know, to introduce some kind of late game infantry unit that can sort of pick up the slack. They're a bit like how the Wehrmacht from Communist 1, which the Wehrmacht in Communist 2 is very much just it, without a lot of the things to mitigate its otherwise structural weaknesses. But, you know, something like the Obersoldaten, or just apply the Obersoldaten, but just with 3 levels of veterancy, and maybe, I don't know, sort of veterancy ability for suppression or something for the machine gun. You know, anything there suggests, you know, when the game hits the late game, you actually, you know, have an incentive to maybe try to hit the heavy Panzer Corps, besides just from maybe a Panther or Panzerwerfer, and actually call in some immediate infantry. That way, you know, pick up the slack a bit. I think that would do a lot for the Wehrmacht in some ways, you know, and help offset some of its issues a late game. But otherwise, been for the Wehrmacht, Grenadiers, MG42s, mortars, you know, tech into, you know, either if you go for a lot of Grenadiers, maybe sort of fast tier 3, though a lot of people seem to drop that one, as most people don't quite get the concept of rushing. But otherwise, you know, G43s and the Grenadiers, get out some Panzer IVs, Ostwinds and Stugs, depending a bit on the taste of the player. Some will try to go for Panthers. I mean, Panthers in tier 4 overall does happen with the Wehrmacht, which, you know, means something's happening there, but the vast majority will still be sticking, you know, to tier 3. Some will try and call in Tigers, but overall, the few will try and stick around to actually, you know, rely on, you know, just calling it in without teching for any medium army in the meanwhile. Flame for half-techs, also very much popular, though, against any infantry build, as it does do a lot there for the Wehrmacht in countering those. So that is something you have to be mindful of. If you go for it, you have to prepare for the flame for a half-track. And obviously, for the Wehrmacht player that is struggling with a lot of infantry builds, half-tracks, flame for a half-track specifically, are not a bad idea. Also, Tellermines, really good idea, because you will be hit by light vehicles, and the Tellermines can do a lot there, sort of versus them for you as a Wehrmacht player. So that, I think, overall sort of covers all the state of the balance now. I mean, again, overall, there are sort of varied strategies. There are some that are slightly, you know, cheesier, if you will, and slightly, you know, frustrating to have to deal with. But overall, there are also plenty that aren't so much, and there are also certainly more strategies that are appearing, and you can all experiment more. And there's also more interesting and novel strategies. So in that regard, you know, things are looking up, but, you know, they could still be better, and hopefully at some point they're going to, you know, get resources enough to actually make more patches, I hope. So there you go. Stay on the balance 2017 with my thoughts on what you can prepare for and deal with, what to expect. Hopefully this has been of use to you. If you haven't, subscribe, like, share and comment on it. This is also a big thank you, of course, to all my Patreon supporters, with which this episode would not have been possible. So thank you all, and see you all tomorrow for another video, of course, of Communist 2, and next month for another State of the Balance. Cheers, everybody.